Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another week of EP Kids Digital. I'm so glad that you joined us. Last week, we started a new series called Zoom. And this week, we're going to be zooming in and out of the second book of the Bible. Does anybody know what the second book of the Bible is called? If so, shout it out right now. It's Exodus. The second book of the Bible is called Exodus. Now, I want to make sure that you know what the word Exodus means because it's kind of important as we go through the story. So the word Exodus means exit. And in the book of Exodus, we see the most spectacularly amazing exodus or exit that the world has ever seen. Now, while I tell the story, we're going to be zooming in and out of some little stories in the book of Exodus, but we're also going to be taking a look at different pictures, and they'll start really zoomed in, and then more and more and more of the picture is going to be revealed. And you guys need to break into teams at your house, maybe parents against kids or girls against boys, or however you want to do it. Or if you're the only one there, just shout out as soon as you think you know what the picture is that's on the screen. So go ahead and take a look at this first picture. Okay, what was it? It was a brick. Now, why would we have a brick? Well, when we left the Israelites last week at the end of Genesis, they were in Egypt, and they had come there and they had been saved from a famine, and they were getting food to eat, and they were pretty excited about this. But quite a few years later, after many, many more Israelites had been born, there was a new Pharaoh who came along, and this Pharaoh did not remember how Joseph had helped his country. And so he was a little bit scared about the sheer number of Israelites that there were, because there were a lot of them. And he was worried they were going to take over his country. So he decided that he would make them all slaves. And he made them slaves, and he made them work hard in the hot sun. And he made them make bricks. And these bricks were made to build all kinds of things for this Pharaoh. All right, take a look at this next Zoom picture. Okay, so that last zoomed in picture was a bush. Now this was just not any ordinary bush, kind of like this one here, although I really do like this bush. It was a bush that Moses saw when he was out in the desert. Moses was out in the desert. He was taking care of his father-in-law's sheep, and he looked up and he saw a bush that was on fire. Now, if I looked up in my yard and I saw a bush on fire, I would be a little bit concerned. And Moses thought this was a little bit odd, and so he walked over to check out the bush. Especially because Moses noticed that this bush was not burning up. It's on fire, but it wasn't burning up. And when Moses gets over to the bush, God speaks to him out of this bush. And God tells him that he is supposed to go and tell Pharaoh to let all of the Israelites go. Well, Moses is scared to death. And he says, God, you have got the wrong guy. You do not want me to do this. I'm not good at this kind of thing. This is a bad idea. And God says, no, it's not. I'm going to be with you. You need to go and do what I'm asking you to do. And so Moses finally says, okay, I'm scared to death, but I'm going to go do what God says. And he heads into Egypt to tell Pharaoh to let God's people go. Well, he tells Pharaoh, and guess what Pharaoh says? No way, no how. Why would I do that? He says, no, forget it, Moses. I need these people to build all my bricks so that I can build all my buildings. They're not going anywhere. And so I want you to check out this next Zoom picture. Okay, so the last picture was a frog. Why a frog? Well, when Moses went to see Pharaoh and he said, "Let my people go," and Pharaoh said no, God sent plagues. Plagues are horrible things that happened to the people of Egypt. God sent frogs. Frogs in your shoes when you went to put them on in the morning. Frogs in your soup. Frogs in your bed. Frogs on the chair when you went to sit down. They were everywhere, and that is just plain disgusting, frankly. But God also sent hail and boils, which are sores all over people's bodies. He sent darkness. And at one point, all of the water in Egypt turned to blood. And every time God would do one of these plagues, Pharaoh would say, okay, I'll let your people go. And then Moses would say, okay. And he'd pray to God, and God would make the plague stop. And then Pharaoh would say, nope, never mind. You have to stay. Finally, God sent the worst plague of all. Every firstborn boy in Egypt died, even Pharaoh's own son. And at that point, Pharaoh said, "Get out." And the Israelite people were packed and they were ready. And check out this Zoom picture. That was a coin. Why a coin? Well, because as the people of Israel are packed up and leaving Egypt, all of the Egyptians came out and they gave them all their gold and all their silver and just said, take our money and get out of here, because we do not want to deal with your God putting plagues on our country anymore. So the Israelites head off into the desert. Now, check out this Zoom. That was a cactus, because they did head out into the desert. And as they are headed in the desert, they get to the Red Sea. And Pharaoh has changed his mind again. And he decided, you know what? I want those Israelites back. So he sends his entire army after them. And pretty soon the Israelites are stuck between the Red Sea on one side and Pharaoh's army on the other. Now, this is a bad place to be. And just in the nick of time, God intervenes, and God sends and parts the waters of the Red Sea so that there are a wall on one side and a wall on the other side. And the Israelites are able to walk right down the middle with no water. If you were at kids camp, we did a demonstration of this just, I think it was last year. They walk down the middle, and when they get to the other side, those walls of water come in and they cover the Pharaoh's army, and his whole army dies. Well, the Israelites continue off into the desert, and when they're in the desert, God provides the things that they need. He brings water out of rocks at times, and he has bread and quail, which are birds, fall from the sky so that they can eat. God does all these miracles, and yet the people continue to complain and to complain and to complain, and they end up wandering in that desert for 40 years. And when Exodus ends, they are still wandering in the desert. 40 years of wandering in a desert is a really, really long time. I can't even imagine. Think about when you go on a road trip with your family. What do you need to take with you? Well, you got to have a car or a way to get there, and you need a map, and you probably need some food and some water and a place to stay. There's a lot of things that go into a road trip. And you know what? For the Israelites, it was the same thing. They needed food. God sent that from the sky, the bread and the manna. They needed water. He brought that out of rocks. They needed a map. And you know what? God actually sent a pillar of fire and a cloud of smoke that guided them and showed them where to go next. They needed a way to travel. That was their feat. They also probably needed some money, and that's what the Egyptians gave them as they left Egypt. God provided everything that they needed for 40 full years in that desert. And you know what? God continues to do that for us. God does it every single day. When I was 10 years old, my family moved from Indonesia to the United States for a year and a half of when I was in school. And when we first got here, I was frankly terrified. I didn't know what it would be like to go to school in America. I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anyone. And I was really nervous. And on Sunday, before I started school on Monday, I went to church and I met a girl at church. And this girl was so kind. She invited me to her house after church. And then the next day at school, she showed up at my locker and helped me figure out how to open it, because I had never ever seen a combination lock in my entire life and I had no idea what I was doing. She ended up being in one of my classes, and God completely provided for me as she and I became really good friends over the next few weeks. But God provided for what I needed, which was a friend in a scary situation. And I bet that God has provided for you in situations too. Maybe it was a social situation where you needed a friend. Maybe God provided food. Maybe God provided a place for you to live. Think through something that God has provided for you, and then pause the video right here and tell someone in the room with you what it is God's provided for you. Now, God continues to provide not just those things, but God provided a way for us to have a relationship with Him by sending Jesus to remove that sin barrier that we talked about last week, so that we can have a relationship with Him here on earth, and we can have a relationship with Him forever in heaven when we die. It's pretty incredible. In fact, our verse for this week is Philippians 4:19, and it says, "My God will meet all your needs according to His glorious riches in Christ Jesus." Yeah. The Bible even says it, and we've seen it proved out in Moses' life, in the Israelites' life, and in my own life. And if you thought of a way that God's provided for you, guess what? You've seen it in your own life too. So this week, spend some time thinking and come up with ways that God has provided for you. And remember, when you get into a hard situation, or when you're scared, or when you're lonely, or when things don't go like you plan, God is able to provide for you.